In this video, we will introduce you to Grid Container. It's based on Bootstrap Grid, and we'll show you how you can use it to improve layout of your forms and make them responsive. We have recently published a new article. It's available in both our documentation for public forms and for SharePoint forms, since this functionality applies to both. In the article you will find a description of what a grid is and how to use it to your advantage. And there are several key advantages to using grid. First one is responsiveness. Forms built with grid scale much better than forms built with tables, and they adjust well automatically. Second one is flexibility. You can define the layout much more precisely, not limiting yourself to table columns. And finally, grid is very powerful. It's based on Bootstrap Grid and has a lot of built-in features. Here we have an example of a form built with grid. But let's go to the editor and try to build one ourselves. When you open the editor and you start working, start adding fields, for example this text box, you already place fields inside the grid. Here's a parent grid property, and you can define the width of a field from 1 to 12, 12 being the max. When you reach the limit of 12, you can add no more fields to the right or left. Then you need to reduce the width, and you'll be able to add field right next to it. Now let's take a look at our containers. For example, tab control. You can use it to add tabs to the form. Name a couple of tabs and set its width to 12, for example, so it spans the whole form. Inside you will see fields placed are also inside the grid, but it's a new grid which is automatically available inside of all containers. For example, inside accordions. We can also drop a field and also see that it's affected. Same is true for wizard. We can name first step, set the width 12, and place our field inside. As you can see, it also has a grid built into it. But this is all fine and dandy. Let's try to build an actual form, or at least an approximation of what you could build using grid. So we drag and drop text field. Let's call it title. Let's check. And what else? Let's add a date and just call it date. Alright. Set their width to 6. What can we do? Well, for starters, let's add plain text control. Right at the top of the form, it will contain header. So in this case, it will be report form. Yep. Set its type to header 1 and set its width to 12. It doesn't affect headers as much, especially if it has limited width, but it's a good idea to set the header width to 12. Now we can drop multi-line rich text. Actually, we can call it description, and I don't think we actually need it to be rich, so I will simply rename title and I'll change it to plain text as well. So now when we drop field next to it, you can see there is a lot of space left. How to work with this? We can just drag and drop another grid and place fields inside of it. This allows you to place 2 or more fields next to the bigger one. Let's drop the title outside. Add a numeric field instead, just for variety's sake. And let's call it test grid. Right, now we can preview this form. And you will see that the fields are not as wide as the title field, and they're not exactly centered. How to fix this issue? Well, it's because each grid has padding. We can either change padding in parent grid property and set it to 0 there, or we can add a custom class, for example no padding. We can specify CSS for our form, and make sure that our custom class has no padding at all. This will make it reusable for our grids as well. So we save, we open the form, we refresh the page, and you can see that the fields are placed perfectly on the form. Currently we have an issue that the form doesn't scale too well on the medium screens. You can see here that the fields are becoming too small to be usable. Well, they're good enough on very small screens, but this is not looking good. How to fix this? Well, if we go back to the editor, we can actually add another grid, give it the same no padding class, and fit all our fields inside of it. Make sure to drag and drop the actual grid inside and adjust it so it looks exactly the same as before. But for this grid we will change stacked property to large, so it stacks fields even on bigger screens. So we can refresh page, and when we start scrolling you will see that the fields are actually stacked, and they continue to be useful on forms of all sizes. So these are just basic examples of using grid. You can find much more information in our article, link in the description. Please check it out, and I hope you'll enjoy using the grid in your forms.